Uh-oh. Okay, it's Thursday, March the 26th, 2025. I'm Dr. Grantham Taylor Hughes for my show, The Grantham Taylor Hughes Show, with my guest host, Lena Suzanne. Hi, Lena. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So we're laughing because we tell lots of jokes in pre-talk, so we can't help but carry over into our videos. We try not to be. We want to be sober professionals. We were sober professionals, and we haven't drank anything for at least 24 hours. Anyway, so go ahead. Didn't you say you had some questions, right?
Yes, I do. A couple of videos ago, you were talking about the AEP, the azimuthal equidistant projection. You were telling us about the true form of the Earth based on the cartographer's rendering, that map, that AEP that is in the UN logo. And so we gained an idea of the form of the Earth and the universe being like a spiraling structure going up to the sun, but we didn't really go into the other planets. And I'm interested to know about the form of the other planets, whether it's as we've been led to believe or something different, and then exploring the sun a bit more too, which we've been led to believe is a ball of fire in the sky.
You even smile when you say that. It's so silly. Yeah. Do you want to put up the app? Can you do that?
Yes, I can do that.
That way, they'll give an example, and I can discuss that.
Excuse me, it's going to just take a moment.
That's right. Well, like in Star Trek, they go working, working, like that. In the computer, okay, there we go. So that's called the azimuthal. You said equidistant projection because the British pronunciation. I say equidistant, but whatever. So you have the app. It's a AEP. So you see that the Earth is a landmass in the middle of water. You can see that landmass. And then around the water is a ring of ice called Antarctica. And you can see that the pristine circle is not really that way. It's jagged like the inside of the Antarctica. You can see the different pieces of the ice and separations and cuts in it. On the other side of that line there is the rest of Antarctica, which is jagged on the other side. See, but a lot of people say, well, how can you get beyond that border? Well, because there is, and we're the only ones that really discussing even this particular map rendering, but this is the United Nations logo. If you look at the United Nations logo, eventually we'll put that up, but it's the same thing as this particular map. And that also their flag uses this particular logo as well. Why did they do that? Well, they were trying to bring back this proper map rendering of it's really the DNA universe, okay? DNA universe is deoxyribose nucleic acid, which is the genetic structure of us. We know about DNA. People know in our daily life. And the DNA universe means that this particular landmass we see here, on the other side of Antarctica, the ring of ice around the uh, the projection there. On the other side of that, there's more water than landmass and more ice, and it goes on up and spins all the way up to the sun. So it's a spindle of necessity, as they call it, as Plato called it, and around 340 BCE, before the Common Era. And he was talking about this and teaching this in reference to the cosmos. So this is really simple, but at the same time, during the Middle Ages, why they went to balls in space, because they thought that was too complex for the people at the time. But Roosevelt was trying to get back to this, and I really appreciate him doing that. But then when he died off, they decided it would be too expensive to change the textbooks. See, and that's mainly what we have limitations in our world today is because of money. Money causes great limitations, and we talk about these things on our videos. Now, looking further at this picture, you can see that this proper mapping of the Earth and you can see the landmass there, and this is a proper mapping of it. is, and when you can see the latitude lines, the ones that go in a circle, and you can see the longitude lines, the ones that go straight out and go past Antarctica, and you can see that it starts to spread from the center, and also the latitude lines, even though they look kind of equal here, once they start spreading out further beyond Antarctica, they spread out, and you can't triangulate the other land masses. That's why New Zealand at the very top there is New Zealand at the top. About 16,000 kilometers north of there is a landmass called Apatu that was found by Raphael Halliday, and his name, he was a Italian explorer with Amerigo Vespucci back about 40 years after Columbus, and they founded America. And what Halliday did is he took a traveled in a ship and went to Apatu north of there in a ship. Okay, and now you're saying, well, it must have been a lot closer. Well, it was at that time because things are in motion; they're moving around all the time, so they're not necessarily a set distance from things, which is really disconcerting when you think about it, because everything's in motion. So how do they create these map renderings? Well, they make an effort to do that. It's a doing factor of cartography, which I really appreciate too, because sometimes it moves quickly and sometimes it moves very slowly. I mean thousands of years. So back in the day, the Apatu was much closer, and when Halliday got there, Raphael Halliday got there. When he came back, and Admiral Byrd did this too back in the 1920s, he went past Antarctica. So when Halliday came back, Thomas More was a British ambassador in the day, who was I think he was in the cabinet of Henry II, I mean Henry VIII. And Thomas More wrote the book called Utopia, which he turned the word around. It was the name of the continent was Apatu, that Halliday learned from the Apatuians, and he turned the Apatuian word around and called it Utopia. Now, most people think Utopia is a mythical place, but if you read the book Utopia, you can see very much so it wasn't really discussing a mythical place. It was talking about reality. So that means beyond Antarctica, to answer your question, Lena, is there is more water, more landmass and ice that spins all the way up to the sun. Now, the outer edges of the physical dimension is 10 to the 51st, which is 10 to the sextillion kilometers. But the Vigintillion, which is 10 to the 63rd, is the distance to the sun. Now, Orthodox science doesn't have this measurement, but that measurement was taught to me by my Lama teachers in India. They have a proper science, that the ancient science they taught to me. And there's where I get these dimensions. They're the exactitude from the distance from Earth to the sun, which is 10 to the is a vigintillion, is one with 63 zeros after it. It's a really vast distance. Did you
Is
have
that,
any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, are you saying Vigintillion with a V?
That's correct. V for Victor.
Okay.
V for Victor. Okay. So,
Okay.
yes, it's a vigintillion. Yeah. Hi there. How are you?
Hi there. Hi there. I've got the if you're interested, I've got the flag, the UN.
Oh, yeah, good. I'm glad. That's a good idea.
So let's share it here.
Yeah, see, there it is. That's the same thing as you got the Earth landmass in the middle. Of course, they don't show Antarctica as a ring of ice around it, because that would cause confusion anyway. Because then, well, how does Antarctica is a ring of ice around the Earth? But you see, there's the Earth landmass. A lot of people haven't really paid attention to this United Nations logo, and that's the flag, but they use it as a logo too, in all of their writings and documentation. So that's really good that you brought this up, because it proves that the United Nations was involved with the EP at one time, and not Theodore, it was what was it? FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the the one who was pushing this back in the 1940s. But then they stopped doing it because, as I said before, when you go to change textbooks and you're talking about millions of dollars, and in those days that was a lot of money, they didn't want to change the book, so they kept it with the same cosmos that we have today. But in that process, you can't really travel in space because they don't know where anything is. So that's why when we're doing the toy, the Omnivergence Institute eventually will be investigating and getting in more discovery about the way the proper cosmos is. And the Platonic paradigm is what it was when Plato was talking about it in the Republic of his Appendix 2 of the book The Republic by Plato. Yeah, so that's really good. I'm glad you brought that that up and showed that gives a credibility to what I'm saying in reference to the first map that we showed, and then we show the United Nations logo. See, documentation is proof up of what we say, and that's important. It's not just hot air that we're talking about. It's the proof in documented form. Very important.
So thinking about the forms of the other planets, if we were to think of a planet, for example, Venus, would we be thinking of a similar kind of form as the AEP?
Yes, the other so-called plane, they're really planets, small planes, and they spin upward. They have similar land masses, but they might be a little bit different configuration, not exactly the same because the landmass issues are really the levels of the water, the heights of the water that go up and down. This idea that they call it those uh, platelets or whatever the platonic plates or whatever. That's just nonsense. Make the level of water rising and falling will show landmass. Okay, and therefore the land masses of the different planes will be different. Okay, and just like the word planet comes from the word plane, the word globe comes from the word glob, a glob, right? So nothing really shows a sphere. Spheroidal comes from the word spirit, spiraling or spiral. You see what I mean? So our language doesn't even have a ball for it because ball comes from blob too. See, so just a blob would be a calculus mood swing that you can't measure because we can't measure curves exactly because it's a linear process of measurement. So to measure a circle is, I call it the miracle of the circle that cannot be measured linearly. I had a good friend who was a doctorate, had many PhDs, and she had made a mention, well, if you have a circle and you cut that circle and turn it into a line, I say, yeah, but you destroy the spirit of the circle. See, to leave it as a circle cannot be measured. So that becomes an issue about geometry. Geometry is just a mental exercise when in reality everything's curved space because Einstein even proved curved space at one time in terms of the formulas that he came up with. Anyway, so that idea that everything's in motion and curved is in line with the spiraling up to the sun and the sun being a portal to other dimensions, so to speak, that are exoteric to a
So,
certain degree. Yeah, go ahead.
so when you say portal, like a just a hole in the cosmos, is that what you mean? Like a portal is like a hole.
Yeah,
And
yeah, a portal would be a doorway or a hole. I mean, a hole is indicating that there's nothing on the other side necessarily. And what I'm saying, it's a portal, a doorway to I'll say another dimension. Just leave it at that because the sun's not really a ball of fire. That's just a ridiculous concept that they reinforce all the time. It's just it's a portal. It's simply that. It's like we're looking in two portals. The sun is a portal, and Plato was a genius, and he proved that up way back when. See, that's the truth be known that, and we know this. Our knowingness arena that we're presenting here, we're doing a knowing factor and not necessarily a logic factor, because logic is auxiliary country logic language is what we're speaking now in English. But in terms of the native language, which I think we've touched on that a little bit, maybe we haven't done. I did today a little bit on the other video. I was talking about the baby has a native language, which doesn't make any sense. It's speaking in tongues. I'll give an example. Would be, it's just baby talk. It's speaking in tongues, right? Anybody can do that, and it's important because that's your native language. And the auxiliary country logic that we speak right now is difficult for people because now you're struggling to have a certain vocabulary to speak. You have to study some, and you have to be understanding. You have to, and that means standing under the Saker language. And to create a logical language, you would take an Saker word. Let's say if I went edikaka, edikaka, and then we would tag that to a synonym for table, like the table that's next to me here. We could call it etikaka, etikaka. And if we kept repeating etikaka, you could call that a synonym for table. You see what I mean? So all the repetition of sounds become understanding the sounds in a logical pattern. See, that's what we have. Auxiliary country logic that we're speaking now has really no value under the native language. But we're dealing with the native language in terms of the knowingness arena. So at some point, when we speak a Saker, with a baby talk, then we've got some advancement. But right now, we're not in a knowingness arena. We're just dealing with the antithetical factor of logic. And that's why people get into arguments and discussions and opinions and viewpoints and who's the smartest of them all. And really, it's a matter of being ingenuous as a childlike way of asking questions. I consider myself that. I don't consider myself ingenious. I consider myself ingenuous in terms of the factor of asking questions. I'll ask questions about anything because I'm an individual. You're an individual too, and we want our individuality to be precise, and we want to hear it in a precise way. But if I draw decent conclusions, and I can by having that skill, then it makes it more interesting that way. Albeit I can be picked on for being horizontally, politically across the board. Okay, I get that. At the same time, what is it in the particular entity that we're addressing today that wants to hear something in a precise way? So if we talk to the group, they call it the group consciousness or whatever, we want to be able to do are speaking in a precise manner. Precision is what we want. We demand precision from who we are on the inside, and I try to give precision as much as possible. And if I don't do that, then I apologize. Well, I think as we were referring to earlier or on the other video, we were talking yesterday, we were talking about the light that the religions talk about. Now, this is esoteric, and I don't want to really get into too much of that because I'm more exoteric. So I think the exoteric practice of physical law, because we have a language which we consider speaking is a part of the ninth sense. A ninth sense is a part of the sentient being. We have 10 senses in a sentient being. The New Agers are talking about that the 10th sense is the crown chakra of our physical body, which is opened in the top of the baby's head and when they're first born, and that's where dreaming takes place, where we go and dream in the 10th door. So the New Agers talk about dreaming being the 10th sense. And then the ninth sense would be oral communication, is speaking, our ability to speak. Right now, that's not necessarily a learned behavior. That's just something that comes from the ability to make the sound come through our voices, making the sound vibration of our bodies or the sound that we speak about. Now, the eighth sense would be writing, the ability to, if we codify our language, we codification and put words, create words, then we learn to write that code. And then the seventh sense would be let's see, six, seven, reading, writing, reading. you have to read the code. So you have to read the code that it's created in the writing, the eighth sense of writing. So we need to read that code, decipher the code, and to understand it. But see, when the code is written like that, the codification you create dictionaries and what have you, and you're talking about language, now you're breaking away from the sound of our native language that doesn't need codification. It's just an expression of the human being and the brain function that makes the vibratory currents that allow our larynx to vibrate. Now, in the Far East, the lamas would be talking about the essence of soul is really the motivator or the original essence of whatnot. And that's fine. They can talk about that all day long. I'm more interested in the exoteric idea of helping people to get rich. Oh, okay. Getting rich. So anyway, so this whole sentient being, if we go to the sixth sense, a lot of people talk about telepathy being the sixth sense, reading people's minds, but then I'm saying, no, you can't because you're an individual. There's a law of facsimiles that I was taught about that you can get similar ideas, but they can't be exact. There's no exactness in our thought patterns between individuals. You can get close, but it's not exact. But the exactitude in an individual and his ability to laugh, his sense of humor, which is indigenous to human beings. I don't see a lot of dogs laughing it up. They'll bark, but they don't laugh. But anyway, so the laughter, the human ability to have a sense of humor is extremely important, and I consider that the sixth sense. So when we get 6 through 10 correct, then we have the sentient being because we have sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell, the first five senses. But any animal has that. But a human being has the five higher senses, which make us sentient. And I'm probably the only one that makes this clear. I think some people get involved with that, but they don't really know what 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are, and I do. I was taught this by my Tibetan teachers when I lived in India for 3 years back in the day. Anyway, so I got to the native language comes out of that ninth sense in reference to the one we're born with, making sounds through our oral communication. Just any sound bite is the sacred. A sacred means a sacred language. That the Tibetans taught me, a sacred language, which is just our native language that we have as a child, and it's easier than doing the logic patterns. Logic patterns are more difficult because now we have to study a vocabulary, we have to learn definitions of terms and all this rigor that goes into that. But there's no rigor in a sacred. Is this easy? Ready? Basikambala, sikambikindikundi, kada sikandala, isikambawundi, sikambikadi, sikambana, ekasinkidisuda. Bilika sikabandoni, sikakantala, sikadikandule, sikabagandadado. I guess we could just do whole videos and speak a sacred, right? Would that work? It might. People might come to, if
We
we
c-
start speaking a sacred for 30 minutes, I
People might
think
find it
people,
relaxing.
wouldn't that be interesting if we started doing that eventually? I think we probably will. And people say, gosh, they evolved. What happened to them? We don't understand it, but we really like it.
Mm.
Well, as long as it pays. Oh, sorry.
So
If
I
it,
think I've heard you say before, Grantham, that that one day we'll be moving towards speaking more in a Seika and less in the language of logic. So can
well,
you?
don't they have that mumble rap? They have mumble rap now.
Mm.
You know, Matt Abram, my Canadian friend, was telling me about that, where people are mumbling now instead of singing the language. You go, so they mumble this. So mumbling, they're mumbling the language, but they're not necessarily breaking all the way into sacred yet. So mumble rap's on its way to sacred.
Mhm.
And they don't even realize it. They're already starting to do that, in reference to practice, a certain advanced practice. I mean, I really, and when I talk about the native language, people laugh all the time because they get giddy because it does make you laugh when you're you're doing your native language. It's important. But the proof up on that is we have a good friend that had an infant in his arms, and it was his nephew, I think, a little baby. And he started speaking a sacred to the baby, and there were about 7 or 8 people around him, and the baby started responding back to him. He was doing and the baby started going, I just and the people are going, wow, what's going on here? So it really freaked everybody out. So just try that with people, everybody, and you're gonna see some really incredible things taking place. So I'm probably the only one that really talks about a Saker, but I didn't make it up. I was taught it in the Far East, see.
Mm.
So everything I've learned from these great teachers that I had because I don't know anything. I know nothing.
Grantham, is it different from the tongues that some religions talk about? Christianity talks about the tongue, speaking
Yeah,
in.
speaking in tongues. Well, that's because your tongue can go. That's all it is. It loosens your tongue up. That's what speaking in tongues is, making no sense and
Uh,
just pushing your tongue around your mouth and whatnot. But it's your individual sound. No other human being has the same sound as you do in terms of the sacred. See, it's an individual language, and that's why it works, because it's your language. But then we know each one of us has the same language, so we know this about each other, and we don't have to understand it. We will know it by its practice. See, that gets into the knowingness arena because it's just a vibration and a sound. Like if we did this, if we started speaking in a sacred, people would just flock to this video. I mean, we'd go viral in a heartbeat if that's all we did. But then we would be irresponsible to the logic patterns too. See, right now people are demanding a certain logic. They want it precise. I'm trying to give it as precise as I can. And there's a demand for that. We can't get into sacred yet because you just can't jump into things without some explanation right now. And so I'm trying to give the best explanation I can to bridge to this higher language in the ninth sense that we have, which is what we have when we were born, and to nurture that. So what I say to people is nurture the native language as much as you can, but then also learn your logic patterns and become an expert and study the dictionaries. I've written a dictionary called the PhD's dictionary or lexicon, PhD's lexicon. So as a compendium of terminology that I put in, obviously. At the same time, I stopped writing it because a little boy said to me, well, if you do this, you'll be doing it forever. Nothing else. Just read defining words like Samuel Johnson on his death. He died at his desk like Immanuel Kant did the same thing, editing the dictionaries. Kant was editing his philosophy works. There was a movie, I think it was Monty Python, Holy Grail, when there was a guy that was inscribing on rock, and he said he must have died because he went the castle arg like that. He must have died when he was scraping the hieroglyphs on the wall. Anyway, it's a funny movie. I like it. It's very funny. They were Henri characters, Monty Python. I think there were 9 people that did a lot of cutting up back in the 70s on Monty Python was a TV show back in the day. They were real characters, let's put it that way. Anyway, uh, so the native language is important. And that would be easy to talk to people about that because you can prove it with babies. Babies will respond to it, and then the parents are wondering, what are you doing? But then when they start talking to them, they come back and tell me their relationship with their baby is so much better since they were nurturing their baby talk, you see. I have friends that have children that from their birth, they were not speaking logical patterns, right? And they learned the logic later on. They're much healthier people and more balanced individuals when they became teenagers. You see, so it's a really good thing in reference to balancing your person or what do you call it? Your psychological, your mindset. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose there's a expectation in society for children to learn quicker, to talk faster, and people will compare infants and say, well, mine's reached so and so months, but and it's still not doing this, and or she's still not doing, reach this milestone. But like
Right.
I'm saying, that there's no.
Competition. It's a competition thing. Who's the best and who's doing all that business. And I'm just saying we need to get out of the way of that and commend whatever's going on, not compete with people. We need to create. The book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, was talking about no competition. And there's no competition when there's plenty of space and there's plenty for everybody. We want to applaud people's skills and not get into competition with them. Who has a better this and better that? Because it's all individual. Every individual needs space to become more individual. And that's important. Instead of competing with somebody, we need to applaud somebody, right? Give them medals, give them commendations. Yes, here's a gold medal for speaking faster than anybody in the world. And that person over there speaking faster than me. And
Thank you, Grantham. I
all
think
right, hey.
on that
And
note,
oh yeah, okay, yeah, do your thing there.
yeah, so we'll say goodbye for today. Thank you for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe. See you next time.
Bye for now.